Breaking news here on CBS Sports HQ. The United States will face England, Iran, and the winner of the UEFA playoff in Group B at the World Cup in Qatar. Now, their opening game will be against the winner of that UEFA playoff and will take place on Monday, November the 21st. Now, the USA have a history with England in their group. They beat England, of course, in that famous game back in 1950, one of the biggest World Cup upsets of all time. And they drew with England in the group stage in 2010 on their way to an appearance in the quarterfinals that year as you take a look at the group. So perhaps not necessarily a bad omen for the United States to be placed with England, of course, when the draw was being made. Lots of oohs and ahs because of the fact they were the first two out in that group, out of the pots, I should say, and then Iran put in there, and then the UEFA path winner, which has yet to be decided. That will be Wales facing the winner of Scotland-Ukraine. If that match goes ahead in the UEFA playoff, one of those three teams will be in the group, in this Group B with the United States, Iran, and England. For more on the draw and what it means, let's now welcome in two guys who played with the U.S. men's national team, our football analyst Jimmy Conrad and Heath Pierce. Jimmy played, of course, with that U.S. team in the 2006 World Cup in Germany. Heath, you were part of that preliminary squad for the 2010 tournament in South Africa that went to the quarterfinals. Let's start with reactions here to the U.S. draw. Jimmy, how you feeling about their placement in Group B?
You know what? I'm pretty excited about it, Jeremy. We get England to think they're better than us on the field, so we can come in and be the underdog, and they're a little bit arrogant, I think, overall in terms of what they're entitled to when these competitions roll around. But they do have opportunities where they got to the Euro final, they had a chance to win a major trophy for the first time since 1966, and they choked. And I feel like we can play into maybe that narrative a little bit and really be the underdogs. I think we thrive as underdogs. We've done that historically, so I'm excited to draw England for a lot of different reasons. And then with Iran, we played them in the 1998 World Cup group stages. We lost 2-1, so it's time for us to get some revenge. And then with regard to Scotland, Wales, or Ukraine, whoever comes out of that European playoff, I like our chances against those particular teams. I think we match up well against them, and I think our quality could show through. Now, obviously, they have some special players, but so do we. So I'm pretty excited about this group, all things considered. Yes, there'll be some challenges like any group, but I think this is a group we can get through.
Yeah, what I would say to that also is that, England, while they have a number of young stars, so do we, as Jimmy mentioned. We have a lot of quality players, and I think we actually match up well against England. Obviously, they fell short in the Euros. They've been sort of in this revitalization. England has traditionally been club over country, at least for the last couple of decades or so, but now you see this re-emergence of this national team and the pride of playing for the national team. So that's going to be a fun one. Also, U.S. versus England at the time was one of the most viewed matches ever, and it was one of the first days of that World Cup, the 1-1 draw with the U.S. and England. And then, obviously, looking at Iran, they cruised through World Cup qualifying. 8 wins, I believe, 1 draw, 1 loss. Really hard to know how they're going to come into this World Cup. They have a number of high-quality players, including Azmoun, who plays at Bayer Leverkusen, hasn't been getting the minutes that he would probably want at the time. It has been their leader in World Cup qualifying. So that's another one that I like our chances against in terms of the way that we match up, the style of play that they have. And then obviously, we're still waiting to see what that third opponent might be, all three of which are pretty favorable when you look at just what we could have gotten. U.S. traditionally gets placed into the group of death, gets very difficult opponents, something that we're going to have to face if we ever want to be going for a World Cup final or going deeper into the tournament. But overall, I like this draw a lot. And it could have gone, it was a little bit dicey there for a few moments where I'm like, there's a few opponents that I don't want to face with this U.S. side, but overall, a pretty good draw.
Yeah, guys, Nigel Real-Coker is here on the set with me. We're going to bring you in our next segment to talk about this, but with Jimmy throwing the smackdown there between the USA and England, wanted to get you in for a reaction here.
Wow, Jimmy, I don't know what England Jimmy has been watching. And now that's why he's laughing uncomfortably, but there's no way you could tell me that the USA and England are going to be perfectly matched. I don't know if he's seen Harry Kane recently, Raheem Sterling, how well stacked the English national team is right now. It's going to be a very tough game for USA.
But it's also going to be a tough game for England. I mean, let's be honest. This USA team, I mean, if they find a little bit of form coming into the World Cup, obviously this is a team that when you look at this group, obviously the USA and England are the guys that are the headliners in this group. You would expect that those would be the two.
It definitely will be. I think what Jimmy has to take into account as well is Gareth Southgate is a new generation of manager. He's changed the England national perception of the national team. He hasn't been the manager that basically did it in an old school fashion way where when certain players were in the squad, that was it. He's always constantly changing, letting players have to perform at the highest level to be in this squad. There's such a tremendous amount of talent in this England side. And also, They've got big tournament experience, which is a lot more than a lot of this American team has, and that plays a big part. It's all easy for qualifying, but when you get there and the build-up and the anticipation, everything that comes around it, this is the greatest sporting occasion the world ever witnesses. There's a lot that comes with that.
England versus the United States will be the second game for both teams in Group B. It's coming up on November 25th. I'm giving you the date so that you can get it onto your calendar. It's going to be an early game because of the fact we'll be in daylight savings times, the 7-hour difference. But November the 25th, it will be USA versus England. Of course, both teams will have a game before that coming up on the 21st. Jimmy, you heard Nigel talk about it there, about that experience and what it plays in terms of when you go to tournaments like this. You are literally on the world's biggest stage when it comes to the sport of football. You played in that 06 team. What does it do for a player psychologically when you know who you're going to be facing in the group stage?
Well, I think it's of the utmost importance because you can prepare in a certain way. And I think it's important that we're playing them second. We're playing England, that is. And I love Nigel, by the way. Great to see you, Nigel. As always cutting me down, making sure that I balance my analysis out. And that's what I love about Nigel. But because we play them second, so we're either going to get Wales or Scotland or Ukraine first, I think that allows us to settle into the tournament a little bit and then have 90 minutes under our belt before we take on England. Now, England can feel the same way when they take on Iran, a matchup that they should beat. So they're going to be coming in with 3 points as well. I think the thing that works against England sometimes is their own media. They put so much pressure on these players to go out and perform and to play a certain style. And if they don't achieve that, then they just get absolutely slaughtered in the press. And there's so many things that are happening off the field that these guys have to deal with, and maybe the Americans or any other teams in the group don't, that I think we can use that to our advantage. Also, I just have to say, though, England have Harry Maguire in their team, and he hasn't been playing as well of late. He's being booed by his own fans, and I think there's a couple players on this English team that maybe aren't being appreciated in the way that maybe they feel like they should be. And that is something else we can play into. And if we score first in that game, I know I'm getting way ahead of myself, but if we can score first, it just puts more and more pressure on England because they're supposed to win. We're not supposed to win. They invented the sport, and we're just playing it. We call it something different. So actually, Nigel, I'm going to throw it out there. If the U.S. win, we should be able to call it soccer from here on out.
The only other thing I would say, by the way, is that obviously with regard to this, Nigel, I mean, you go back again to 2010, and the U.S. was supposed to lose in that game. Obviously, the U.S. didn't play very well, and as Jimmy mentioned, England will always be the favorites in this matchup. But you go into the Euros, different than the squad in the World Cup, and I remember all the excitement around the beer throwing and all that for 2018 in Russia. But this team now has a different experience because of what they went through in the Euros. Now, this U.S. side is young, and they don't have tournament experience, but now they've gone through the Nations League, picked up a trophy. They've done well in our region and picking up crucial experiences along the way, including playing Mexico a few times, beating Mexico 3 times in a year, and then now qualifying. While it hasn't been the greatest of qualifying campaigns, this group is coming off the failures and the pressures of the 2018 failures to qualify for the World Cup. So I think there's a little bit of a chip on the shoulder in this group in terms of the mindset that they have, as well as looking at moving forward and looking at the quality of players that we have. We aren't the same as we were before. We have good players playing at bigger clubs, and while I do think England are naturally the favorites, I think this U.S. side is ready for a matchup against an England side in terms of the style of play versus some of the other nations, where I think it might be a little bit more unpredictable in terms of what they're used to facing as a national team or at the club level.
The U.S. men's national team haven't won more than a single game in the group stage at a World Cup since South Korea in 2002. They moved on in that tournament. Based on what we know now, what are the realistic expectations for this team in this group for you, Heath?
Well, I mean, it's to get through the group stages, right? It's to get out of the group stages. You look at this team right now, and obviously I think Nigel's got a great point. Playing in a tournament is different than qualifying over 14 matches. It's different than anything else, right? It's about how you navigate that group, how you finish top of the group, how you set up your first game, when they're mandatory points, where the toughest opponent in your group is to get out of those group stages. So it's a little bit more strategic in the way that you have to approach group play. But this team has to have the goal of getting out of the group stages. You look at this group in general, and you've got Iran, you've got, whether that's again Wales or otherwise Scotland or Ukraine, you've got an opportunity to get out of this group. Obviously, there's still the unpredictability of what that team is going to be. 3 very different teams, but ones again that I like our chances of getting points against. but it has to be able to get out of this group. There can't be a goal of anything less than that. Getting to the World Cup, yeah, when you compare it to not qualifying in 2018 is a big deal, but that was a huge failure, the greatest failure in the U.S. men's national team history. So for this team, it can't just be getting there and enjoying it and gaining experience because we're going to host in 26. It has to be a step further than that. The bar has to be set a little bit higher and at least getting out of this group stages and then seeing from there.
Yeah, I agree with Heath. I think getting out of the group is imperative. I would also say that I'm going to lean on what Nigel said before with regard to tournament play. We need as many of these tournament games as possible because we're planting seeds for this core of players to have success in the 2026 World Cup, which we're hosting with Mexico and Canada. A lot of these players, some of the youngest that are out there World Cup qualifying around the world, our average starting 11 is under 24 years old. Imagine what they're going to be in 4 years. They're going to be in their primes, theoretically, 27, 28. Then our younger players underneath them will come in and continue to bolster our team. So we need as many games as possible. We need to cut our teeth at the highest level as possible. And we have a manageable group. I think that's the best way to describe it. We should be able to get a result against Iran. We should be able to get a result against Wales or Scotland or Ukraine. And I'm hopeful that we'll get a result against England. And that should be enough for us to get through. And then from there, it's about who do we draw in the round of 16. When we got to the quarterfinals in 2002, we took on, in the round of 16, Mexico, an opponent we were very familiar with. So if we get a draw like that and match up well with a team in the round of 16, who knows? And this team, as we've seen in the Nations League, which we won, the Gold Cup, which we won, and then in some good performances throughout World Cup qualifying, when we get some confidence, we're a very difficult team to beat. But it's getting that confidence, I think, is going to be the trick, especially if things aren't going our way to start.
And getting that first win, of course, is going to be huge. Former U.S. men's national team members Jimmy Conrad, Heath Pierce, breaking down the U.S. men's national team's draw for the World Cup in 2022 for us here on CBS Sports HQ. They, of course, in Group B. And, of course, for more on the U.S. draw, be sure to check out Jimmy and Heath on the In Soccer We Trust podcast. The U.S.-focused soccer podcast recently launched as part of our CBS Sports podcast network. The guys will be discussing the draw, what it all means in detail as we head towards Qatar this November. In Soccer We Trust can be found wherever you download and follow your favorite podcasts.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.